Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, exclusively on TuneIn with James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin, and we are super pleased and pumped to be joined right now by Rachel Galligan, our Big 12 women's basketball insider. What's going on, Rachel? How are you?
I'm good. Just enjoying some morning coffee, hanging out with my guys. How are you guys?
Yeah, doing great. Thank you.
Cold. We're cold.
We're freezing, actually. Yeah, it's far too cold. Like, I live in Dallas to not have 20-degree temperatures. So might as well live somewhere else.
Might as well
with
come to
mountains.
Colorado. Just
right,
come
exactly. Like, if I'm going to deal with 20 degrees, I might as well live in Colorado and have
Right.
mountains and stuff. And not strip malls as far as the eye could see like we have in Dallas. All right. Let's start here. Iowa State lost last night to Utah. They're 10-6 now overall. Sort of a extremely disappointing start. Does that say more about Utah or Iowa State?
I think the game last night, in my opinion, says more about Utah. That this is a team that I think has not gotten the credit, recognition that they deserve so far this season. They've really been towing that line of the top 25. I fully anticipate them being in the top 25 when that poll gets released here in a few hours. If they're not, I would be absolutely shocked just with the way the game's played out. Utah's really, really good. They're veteran, they're old, they're experienced, so it's very deserving. And I think Iowa State, it was a toe-to-toe game. And I think the biggest thing, and I've been doing a lot of research and thinking about Iowa State, we have to remember that this is one of the youngest teams in the nation. You got 8 underclassmen, just 1 senior, and Emily Ryan. And they had a ton of expectation after last year. They kind of went on this, I don't want to say fairy tale, but, just this crazy, awesome, fun run late in the season last year with a bunch of freshmen doing things that was just, you don't usually see out of a team that's got that many freshmen playing that many minutes. And so I think they did deserve some recognition headed into this season. But I think that there is some perspective and a bigger picture that they are young. I think this team is still learning what it takes to win games at a high level consistently. And I think people don't realize too, Emily Ryan's been on a minutes restriction, very similar to how she was last year. And that's your lone senior. I think she's leading the nation in assists. If not, she's top 1 or 2. I haven't checked it this morning, but, so she's obviously, when she's on the floor, they are significantly better. But minutes are down. It's not like she's out there playing 40 minutes a game. And so I feel like this Iowa State team, it's not a sophomore slump. I just think they're young. They're learning what it means to compete. They had a really tough non-conference playing South Carolina, UConn, a really tough Iowa swing. The scheduling, Bill Fenley jokes, like, I don't know what I was thinking when, scheduling some of these games with this team, but at least they're battle tested. And so I kind of have a different approach when you really look at the big picture with this team. I want to see, when we're talking about them at the end of February, what does this team look like? And what do some of these, tests, kind of prove to us late in the Big 12 season?
Yeah, what do you think this team could look like? Like, Audie Crooks still had 29 points and 8 rebounds. Is Emily Ryan's minutes restriction ever going to get lifted? Like, what's the outlook?
My understanding is that is very much a possibility. That kind of happened last year when she got later into the season. She was playing more minutes into tournament time. So I think it's entirely possible again. Audie Crooks has been so good. I mean, we have got to start talking about her on a national scale so much more. She's averaging like 29 points in the last 6 games, shooting like 66% from the field. I mean, right now, Audie Crooks is one of the best players in the nation in terms of the numbers that she's putting up. And so you've got that type of guard play. You've got, a veteran senior in Ryan, who is one of the top facilitators in the country. They share the basketball exceptionally well. We know they can shoot the ball well. I think the difference in the game last night, in my opinion, was Utah hit 13 threes. Iowa State only hit 5, which is really uncharacteristic for them at home. So, I think that they're still a tournament team. I think that they very much, if they did it last year, why not again this year going on? I just think they just need some time together, and they just need a little more experience under their belts. And, it almost feels like this year reality set in a little bit, so I still think they're a tournament team. I think they could make some noise late in the Big 12 season.
Rachel, is it K-State and TCU in sort of that upper tier of the Big 12? And who else, if anybody, is there? And who do you think would be kind of in that second tier?
I think you have to talk about K-State, what they've been able to do and how dominant this team is, leading the nation in field goal percentage and a lot of statistical categories. They're so good. And you've got, players like Ayoka Lee and Tamara Poindexter and Serena Sundell, who had one triple-double this season. She, was close to having a couple more, a third or a second one against Houston. So they're just so deep. There's so many weapons on that team.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there's 7 in the net right now. TCU is 8. I think that's justifiable when you've got kind of this 3-headed monster of Madison Connor, Haley Van Lith, and Sedona Prince. What Madison Connor's doing right now is so impressive from the perimeter. There's just a lot of weaponry on that team as well, and they're old. Both of those teams are really old in their experience. The difference between the two is K-State's been together consistently as a group a little bit longer. TCU, you add a key player like Haley Van Lith, but they don't look like they've kind of been thrown together here this year. And so, yeah, those two are very clearly at the top in my mind. And I think that next tier is West Virginia. You got JJ Quinterly, who is really starting to come on. I think was challenged after that Colorado loss. That was a bad loss for West Virginia. It shouldn't have happened. They were up by 16 late in the third quarter and kind of just really let that one slip away. And I think that was a turning point. I've kind of really got my eye on West Virginia and how does this propel that team moving forward. But JJ Quinterly came out, had 31 points, 17 points in the first quarter. In their previous outing earlier this week. And, you've got some players like Jordan Thomas and Celia Riviera who are really starting to kind of step up on the interior. That's what helped them beat BYU. So just with the way they play and how disruptive they are defensively, it's really hard for me to not look at West Virginia. That's a team I think that they can make it to a Sweet 16 without a shadow of a doubt. And probably right after that, for me, is Utah coming on at 25 in the net. We already talked about them. And the brand of basketball they play, high percentage shots, and really, really strategic with the type of shots that they're going to get from the perimeter and in the paint. And they're old. They've been together. They're experienced. Gianna Neepkins has been playing really well this year. It's so nice to see her back on the floor. Had a little bit of a scare last night. I was so glad to see her be able to come back out there. And then from that, probably that next tier, you're looking at Oklahoma State, who was going into this weekend huge on. They've been such a fun story this season with how well they play, and they're like top 20 in like almost every statistical category, with their shooting and their defense and their field goal percentage. They're 4th in the nation, and they're shooting a lot of threes. So they're impressive. They had a little bit of a slip up against Kansas. That was a great game on Saturday, but it really just came down to that was the first game this season they really struggled from the perimeter. So Oklahoma State's a tournament team, and I think Baylor has a chance as well.
Talking with Rachel Galligan, our Big 12 women's basketball insider. So what's been the bigger surprise? Is it TCU being ranked as high as they are in all their strong non-conference wins, or is it this kind of pair of Utah and Oklahoma State?
I guess I feel like TCU, I'm not surprised that they're in the position that they're in. They weren't ranked headed into the season. I think the voters wanted to see what they were capable of doing, and they did, I think, what we all would think a team with a healthy Sedona Prince and Haley Van Lith and Madison Connor could do. So I don't feel like I'm necessarily surprised. I mean, they had key wins over NC State, Notre Dame. Really, I think a turning point for this team was South Carolina. At that point, they had so much hype. And then they go get smacked by South Carolina. And it was like, okay, hold on, there's levels to this, you guys. And I think that was good. That'll ultimately be really good for TCU in the long run. But I'm not necessarily surprised about Utah. I was a little surprised that they haven't gotten the recognition they deserve yet. I think the only reason is because they took that loss to Northwestern really early in the season on a neutral court. Had they not lost that game, they would have been top 25 a month ago, in my opinion. I think the biggest surprise been Oklahoma State. They don't really have like a premier superstar on their team. They're just when you watch them play, they all play exceptionally well together. I think that you could talk about Staley Hurd, a really impressive sophomore who was putting up video game numbers from the perimeter. I mean, just wild stuff. 7 for 7 from the 3-point line, then followed it up with might have been 5 for 7 the following game. So they're just a team that I think when you watch them play, they love playing together. The chemistry is that exceptionally good, and the energy and they're just fun to watch, and they just work so hard on both ends of the floor, and they have a blast playing together. And so that's probably the biggest surprise to me is just I knew they'd be talented as a group, but I didn't expect them to be, a huge problem that they've become right now.
Talking with Rachel Galligan, our Big 12 women's basketball insider, Big 12 basketball insider. I guess just overall, some of your overall thoughts, some of the best performances, some surprise players you've seen so far. What sort of stands out to you?
Well, let's start, I guess, with Utah. Last night you had Maya Toure, who is a really major contributor for Utah. We talk about a lot of the guard play with Utah. That's kind of Gianna Neepkins, Kennedy McQueen, players that have, been there for years. And then you got Toure, who is a transfer in, and we don't necessarily consistently talk about post play. And she was so good in that game, 24 points, being able to at least go toe to toe and battle with Audie Crooks. I don't think you can sit here and think that you're going to isolate Audie Crooks and take her out of her game. But really impressive performance and a huge asset for Utah this season. Who else? I mean, I already talked about Madison Connor. Has been so good this season. I think the last game she had 29 and 7 assists. I mean, she's shooting like 45% from the 3-point line. I can't stop screaming about the play of Connor and just how good she's been. And I guess I'll talk about there was a big game earlier on Saturday, Colorado versus Baylor. You had Aronette Vonleh, which interesting because was at Colorado, transferred to Baylor. I was really keeping my eye on that game and just trying to figure, sometimes a game like that can mess with your head a little bit. She was really good. She ended up having 15 in that game and a very much needed Baylor win. So those are just some players. I've already talked about Quinterly, some players that I wanted to kind of just bring up, that I maybe hadn't mentioned yet.
Rachel,
I got one more. I got one
Okay.
more. I got to shout out Samaya Nichols. Had 27 and 7 assists in that win over Oklahoma State. One of the best scorers in the country for sure.
What do you think we'll learn about Kansas? They host TCU on Wednesday.
I think that this is a dangerous team because of that young woman I just talked about and Samaya Nichols. The issue with Kansas, and they're much better than what you might look at their Big 12 record. But they're good. It's probably too early to start having those types of conversations. Oh, look at their record and they're 1-2, okay, but like they're kind of a silent assassin, if you will. The biggest issue is going to be on the interior, and they'll talk to you about that in terms of not having a dominant big in the paint. They've had to really change up how they're playing this season. I think if they can get some players that can at least be serviceable, and you've seen the Adonai Papadopoulou, I think is her name. I always struggle with her last name. The center from Greece on Kansas. She's actually been able to come in and just use her size and be really impactful and give them some meaningful minutes. So that's going to be the challenge there is, Sedona Prince, and how can they go up against some of these premier teams, the Kansas States with Ayoka Lee, Iowa State with Audie Crooks, that their brand has had to shift a little bit because they don't have that.
Then the other one, how does K-State match up against Utah? That's a tough road game for Kansas State on Wednesday.
I'm really excited about that one. I feel like at times, they lead the nation in scoring margin. So, you watch this K-State team and it's like, man, what is it really going to take for them to get challenged? And even like they kind of beat themselves in quarters. They're so good. It's almost like, okay, they might have like a slip up in the third quarter. Like that happened against Houston. It was a tie game going into the fourth. And then they get challenged and, Midi gets in them a little bit and they flip a switch and they go on a 21-0 run and just run them out of the gym. So I'm really looking forward to that game. That's a much needed challenge for K-State. I mean, their only loss of the season, correct me if I'm wrong, that was Duke.
Yeah, Duke.
And so, I mean, that feels like that was a really long time ago, late November, and they've handled everybody ever since that point. So really looking forward to that game. They're going to have to do a really good job of guarding the perimeter. But obviously that's a tall task for Utah. That's probably my game of the week, in my opinion.
Rachel Galligan, always fun to catch up with you, Rachel. Take care. Be well.
I appreciate you guys. Stay warm, okay?
You too.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. See ya. Yeah, just a normal winter day in the north is really, really difficult to get anything happening in the south. The south shuts down for a normal winter day in the north.
How is it 40-some degrees in Colorado? They've got a foot of snow in Kansas, and it's 15 degrees here in Dallas.
Yeah, this is insane.
Makes no sense.
James Westlake, Ari Tepkin, Big 12 Radio exclusively on TuneIn.